Welcome back from the long weekend. You're watching The Big Story with me, Harianto Diman. Subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you will not miss an episode. If the past year has taught us anything, it's how quickly inflation can rise and how we have to get used to living with higher prices. In the latest inflation report out today, core consumer prices in Singapore stayed at 5.1% for the third straight month in December. Reasons include smaller price increases for retail goods as well as electricity and gas. For 2022 as a whole, a core inflation averaged 4.1%, higher than the 0.9% recorded in 2021. Now, including the cost of accommodation and private transport, headline or overall inflation came in at 6.1% in 2022, up from 2.3% in 2021. According to official estimates, car and accommodation cost increases are likely to stay firm in the quarters ahead on the back of tight COE quotas for cars and strong demand for rental housing. Associate Editor Vikram Khanna joins us now with more. Vikram, with core inflation staying at 5.1% for the third straight month, what do you make of today's figures and what does it mean for the average Singaporean?
Well, the biggest takeaway for me from today's figures was that we are now in an inflationary era, a more inflationary era, and it's going to stay for a while. So before we look at the monthly numbers, let's just look at what happened in 2022 as a whole. All items inflation rose by 6.1% compared to 2.3% in 2021. Now that's quite a big jump. If you look at core inflation, which excludes accommodation and private transport, that also had quite a big jump to 4.1% in 2022 from 0.9% in 2021. So I mean, these are quite large increases, right? And the thing is, it's going to stay. I mean, it might moderate slightly, even that is uncertain. But basically, we're in an era of elevated inflation. So that's my biggest takeaway. And I think that should be something that all Singaporeans should be cognizant of. If you look at the monthly figures, that's December over November. There is some good news. All items inflation came down slightly because private transport costs came down, because the increase in car prices and petrol prices was much more moderate. Then you had retail items also coming down slightly, and then you had accommodation inflation also moderating because of the slower increase in home rents, and electricity and gas prices came down a little bit. On the other hand, services inflation went up a little, mainly because of travel costs. The December is quite a heavy travel season, and also non-cooked food items went up because of higher food prices. But don't pay too much attention to the monthly figures. I think the big takeaway is what happened year on year for the whole year of 2022 compared to 2021. It was a year of much higher inflation, and it looks like it's going to remain more or less that way.
Let's look forward, Vikram. MAS says core inflation is projected to stay elevated in the first half of this year before slowing more discernibly in the second half. How can we know that inflation and prices will be coming down?
Well, to be honest, we really don't know for sure. MAS expects that by the second half of the year, global inflation will moderate. That's very possible because major economies are slowing down. At least the US and the EU are probably likely to slow down, and inflation in those countries, those countries has peaked already. So that's one possible good news about inflation. The slowdown might also lead to a labor market in Singapore becoming less tight because we export. Maybe the exports will slow down a little bit, so our labor market might become tight. So that might also contribute to lower inflation. But even assuming that all these things happen, headline inflation in 2023 will still be 4.5 to 5.5%, excluding the one-off increase in the GST. So that's elevated by historical standards. But the MAS, mind you, also warns of upside risks to inflation, right? So one is the fresh commodity shocks, because this could be the result of China's reopening. China is a huge consumer of commodities, including energy, metals, as well as food. So that will add a huge amount of demand for commodities, and that might push prices up. On top of that, could probably continue to be supply constraints because of the continuing war in Ukraine, which will affect food prices, fertilizer prices, metals prices. So that could also be another upside risk. And then the labor market, especially in the US, is still pretty strong. And you could have wage pressures coming out of there. So that could be yet another possible problem for 2023. So on balance, I'm not totally confident that we're going to have significantly lower inflation in 2023. Even if it comes down, it'll only be a little bit. Yeah.
Vikram, thank you for your insights, Associate Editor Vikram Khanna.
Thank you.
And that's today's big story. Visit straitstimes.com for more news and our YouTube channel for more videos. Subscribe by clicking the red button below. I'm Haryanto Diman. Join us tomorrow for more stories on The Big Story.